We're in the Gemara on Daf Chav Beis Amud Beis at the bottom of the Yomad. The Mishnah here was speaking about the minig that there was, Barishayna, that they would take these tall poles and they would make a fire on it, and that's how they would relay the message to faraway places of the new month that they established, on what day they established it. Sagt the Gemara, Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a Braise, Ein Masiin Masuais, they would not make this message with the fire, Ela ala Chaydish Anira Bizmanai. Only when the new moon was seen in the right time. Bizmanai here means that they saw it on the 30th day. So the previous month was only 29 days, and the 30th day was already the Aleph of the next month. Lekacha, and that's when they sanctified the new month. Ve'emasai Masiin, and when would they lift up these poles with the fire? La'ayri burai, the next night to this 30th day, which is now the first day of the new month. So the following night after Bezdin was Mekadesh to Chaydish. This is the Braise. So the Gemara says, L'memre, shall we say, based on the words of the Braise here, the Achaser of Dinan, when the month only had 29 days and the 30th day was the Aleph of the new month, then they would make this sign. But Amale loy of Dinan, if the month was 30 days and only the 31st day was the first of the new month, then they did not make this sign. My time, if that's what this Braise is saying, so then what's the reason for this distinction? Why shouldn't they always show people when the new month was, whether it's Chaser or Mali? So the Gemara explains the reason here. Amar Rab Zeire, says Rab Zeire, Gzeire. The reason is it's a Gzeire for the following thing. Mishum Rosh Chodesh Chaser, Shechaliyos be'erev Shabbos. What happens if it comes out that there's a Chodesh, which is Chaser, it's only 29 days, and the Rosh Chodesh comes out on a Friday? So now you're going to have a problem with relaying the message with these fires. If they're going to want to show people when the new Chodesh is, when are they going to be able to do that? That I can't do it Friday night. You can't make the fire Friday night. So about Puke Shabbata. They could only do this on Matzah Shabbos. So now, what's going to happen? They're going to do it on Matzah Shabbos. What are people going to think? Are people going to know when the Bezdin was Mekadesh the Chodesh? If you're going to say Navid Nami Amale, that they used to use this sign to relay the message of when the new month is, whether the month was a chaser, whether it was 29 days, or whether it was 30 days. So then, in such a case, when Aleph was on a Friday and they had to wait until Matzah Shabbos, Asalamiti, people are going to come to make a mistake, and they're going to say one or two things. Amri, so either they could say, Hi chaseru, really this month was a chaser. There was only 29 days. And the reason why they did not show the fire yesterday, because yesterday was Shabbos, they couldn't. So even though they only showed it Matzah Shabbos after the 30th day of the month, or after the 31st day already, but nevertheless, they would say maybe it already was Chodesh on Friday. Or they'll think, Malehu. No, maybe it was full 30 days and only the 31st day is the new day of the month. And they show the fire in the right time, Matzah Shabbos. So Bekitzer, they can't have this thing done every single month, whether Mali, whether Chaser. Because then when Rosh Chodesh comes out on a Friday, they run into this problem. People are not going to know what they're showing Matzah Shabbos. Was Rosh Chodesh on Friday or Shabbos? Frag the Gemara.
Mali, then it won't happen because it's automatically?
One second. Let's see the Gemara Shaila. If your whole problem is specifically for Erev Shabbos in such a scenario, so then you have a simple eitzah. Let them make this sign to show when the new month is Ben Amalei, Ben Achaser, both for a full month, 30-day month, and a Chaser, 29-day month. I have a problem with Erev Shabbos. V'chi mikla Rosh Chodesh be'Erev Shabbos. When Rosh Chodesh falls out on Erev Shabbos, so then loy levet klal. Then on Erev Shabbos, you're not going to make the sign at all. And v'kivin de loy avdinon Matzah Shabbos. And then when people are going to see that Matzah Shabbos, they did not make any sign, they didn't do anything, there was no fire. Ve'avdinon amale. And if it would be a male, then they would show the sign of the fire. Mediyadi the chaseru. That itself will be an indication that it must be that Rosh Chodesh was already on Friday. If Rosh Chodesh would have been Shabbos, there would be no reason why they shouldn't make this sign with the fire on Matzah Shabbos. So very simple. If Rosh Chodesh is Erev Shabbos, so then you don't do anything, and that itself will be the indication that Rosh Chodesh wasn't Erev Shabbos. But otherwise, you should have the sign always. You should have the sign on every Chodesh. So the Gemara says, no, that's not a good idea, because Amri, people might still make a mistake and say, Hi, Malehu, that really the Rosh Chodesh was 30 days and then the Rosh Chodesh on the 31st day and they made the Rosh Chodesh on Shabbos. If so, they should have shown the sign with the fire on Matzah Shabbos. Itnusi. It's because it's Matzah Shabbos. And Matzah Shabbos, it was an Einus. As Rashi here says, it was the Shikrus. They got Shikr, there was Shabbos, there was the big Fabrengen, and the people that were in charge of taking care of this couldn't get this done. There was an Einus. That's what people might say. So they're not going to come to... If this is something that was always done, they always had the fire that was to show when the Chodesh is. And Punkt this time they didn't. People are not going to say, the reason is because it was on Friday and therefore they couldn't do it Friday night. People might say, no, it was because it was Shabbos. And Shabbos people got drunk and therefore they did not do their job. Matzah Shabbos. So we can't rely on this. So therefore we go back to the Eitzah we said before, that this is a sign that's used only for a Chodesh that's Chaser and not for a Chodesh that's Male. Fragt the Gemara, how about the other way around? So if the problem is you want to make a difference here, that there should be only a Chodesh, that this sign should only be for one kind of month and not for another kind, so you should be able to know the distinction when it comes to when it falls out on a Friday. So how about if you're going to do the opposite? If you're going to say that the sign is only on a Male, only for when you have a full 30 days, and then the 31st day is the time when they show it. And then if it's chaser, they're not going to make the sign at all. So then if it comes on Friday, and the Chodesh of chaser fell out on Fridays, and they didn't make the sign, so they're going to know, it was a chaser. That's why they didn't make the sign at all. So Amar Abaye says that's not going to work. Mishum bittul malacha la'am l'shnei yamim. If you have a choice to either make the sign only on a Male or only on a chaser, and you're going to choose to make the sign only on a Male, so even if, for this scenario of Erev Shabbos, this is going to work out, people are going to know that if they didn't make the sign, it's because it was on Erev Shabbos and it's a Chaser, but for the month of Tishrei, when it's Rosh Hashana, that's what Rashi's Pshat in the Gemara is. This refers to Rosh Hashana, which is Tishrei, so then it's going to come out that people are going to have to wait an extra day until they can work. They're going to keep Rosh Hashana one day, and then there's no sign yet to see when they were Makadosh the Chodesh, because they're only making the sign for a Male. So Matzah Yom Kippur, Matzah Rosh Hashana that is. Matzah Rosh Hashana, they still have to wait another 24 hours to see the next day if they're making the sign or not. And they're going to have to wait to go to do work for a whole other 24 hours. So therefore, instead, they said the minig is no, make the sign on the Chaser. So like this, if the month was a chaser, so right after they keep Rosh Hashana, the first day, Matzah Rosh Hashana, right away they'll have the sign for a chaser to see that they can go to work. They won't have to wait another 24-hour period.
So the problem is the work, not if they have Rosh Hashana the right day.
Correct. They'll have the Rosh Hashana the right day, but we don't want people to be mevatel from their malacha a whole extra 24 hours. Yeah. Tosfos and Rashi both addressed Benegeh to what the Gemara was suggesting before, that you should make the sign only on a Male and not on a Chaser. And then the Gemara says, so you'll know that if it fell out on a Friday, and because they didn't make any sign, Matzah Shabbos, so you'll know that it was a Chaser, and therefore you'll know that Chodesh was on Friday. But didn't the Gemara before say that if they don't make the sign Matzah Shabbos, so then you might say that the reason is because people got shikr and there was an Einus, and maybe the Chodesh was on Shabbos. So how could that be a sign for anything? So Rashi and Tosfos both say that the Gemara only said this, that an Einus, that people will think that there was an Einus, according to what the Gemara suggested before, if you would say that they made the sign with the fire every single month, whether it was Male, whether it was Chaser, they always made the sign. And then if all of a sudden 1 month you don't have this sign, so then people might say, the reason is because there was an Einus that happened. But if to say there always was, that they made the sign only for a Male and not for a Chaser, so then people are not going to be toilet in the Einus of Shikras. People are going to say, this is probably, we know that there's Chodesh on Friday, it's a Chaser, so it would make more sense to them to just say that probably it's because the Rosh Chodesh was established on a Friday. That's been again to the Pshat in the Gemara before. Regarding this Gemara over here that says Bittul Malacha, so as I said, Rashi says that it goes on Rosh Hashana, but Tosfos says it goes in every Chodesh, because the Gemara says that There's a minig for the women not to work on a shchaydish, bittul malacha. This is a special yom tov for the women because they didn't contribute by the egel when Aaron said parkun is mezav. So therefore they don't work on a shchaydish. So if you're going to make the sign after the malay, so then the women are going to have to wait an extra 24 hours to be able to work. So this is benigay to this minig. That's the bittul malacha that the Gemara is speaking about. So according to Taisus, it's not just Rosh Hashana, but it refers to every Rosh Chodesh. So the Mishnah said, how would they do this? They would bring these long poles of the klunsais that were made from erez. So the Gemara here goes through different types of arazim, and I don't know the translation of all of this. If you have the art scroll, you can tell me the translation. But the Gemara is going to go through a lot of different types of woods here, the arazim. Sagt the Gemara, Amar Rav Yude, Dalid, Mine, Arazim, Hein. There are 4 types of arazim. Huh? They don't have the translation there either? Okay. So I don't feel so bad. There are 4 types of arazim. Erez, Katrum, Eitz Shemen, Uverosh. What's Katrum? Amarav, that is Adra. This is the Adra. So Rashi here points out that this is a tree that's mentioned in the Gemara in Beya. We learned that it says there that if a person wants to have a good mazel, so he should plant an Adra tree. So this is that. That's what it's talking about here. The Beit Rab Shila Amri Mavliga. This tree of Katrum is a Mavliga. Amri la zu Galomish. Okay. So according to this opinion of Yehuda, there are 4 types of arazim. Opliga de Rabbi Baravona. Dama Rabbi Baravona, Amri Beirav, they said in the Yeshiva of Rav, Asara mine arazim hein. There are 10 types of arazim. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Etim ba midbar, the Eibusher says, I will plant in the midbar erez, and then shita, hodos, eitz, shemen. And so these are all types of arazim. So even the hodos is a type of erez. And then it continues in the pasuk. Asim ba'arava, I will place in the wilderness, berush, tidar, ta'ashur, yachtav, all together. So over here we have so far 7. So erez, the Gemara says, what's the erez? Arza. Shita is turnisa. Hodos is asa. The hodos we know what it is. Eitz shemen is afarsima. And berush is barta. Tidar, shaga. Ta'ashur is shurivna. Okay, so the Gemara says, Hani Shiva Avu, you only have 7 here, and you started off saying that there's 10. Kiyaser Ravdimi Amar, Ravdimi came and he said, Hisifu Aleim, they added another 3. Alaynim, Almaynim, and Almaygin. What are Alaynim? Alaynim is Butmi, Almaynim that is Bluti, Almaygin is Ksisa. Now Ksisa is something that the Gemara is going to talk about later. I think the translation for this I saw is coral. Yeah. In Rashi here, it says, Corallo, which is very similar to the translation. It's something that grows actually on the seabed, and they bring it up from the sea. Ikke de Amri. Huh? Which one? Butmi? What's Butmi? I have no idea. I don't know. Ikke de Amri, the other 3 that we didn't mention before are Arainim, Armainim, and Almaygin. Arainim is Ari. Okay, Armainim is Dulvi, and Almaygin is Kisisa. Almaygin is this Kisisa, this coral that grows on the seabed. Now the Gemara is going to bring an interesting thing about this Kisisa, how they brought it up from under the sea. Vitzi adir lo yavren. There's a pasuk that says that there's a big boat that will not pass through this river. This is a pasuk in Avuel, Asadlova, and Yeshaya that talks about a big stream of water that's going to come out of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and it's going to be such a big sea of water that even a big boat won't be able to pass through it. Okay, so Amarav, Zuborni Gedoyel, this is a very big boat. And this big boat was used to bring up the coral from under the water. How? Heichi Yavdu, what do they do? Maisi Shis Alfe Gavri, they would bring 6,000 men, Betreisa Yacheshati, and this would take them 12 months, and 12 months of the year. Vamrila, others say Treis Alfe Gavri, they brought 12,000 men, Bishita Ayar Cheshate, and this would take them 6 months. And what would they do? Vitani La Chala, they would fill this massive boat ad shachna until it would start sinking, it would lower down. Venochis, it would go down to the bottom of the seabed. Right? So as Rashi said, it didn't sink below water because it didn't get filled with water. It was in an area where the coral was growing is shallow enough that it would sink, but the top of the boat would remain above the water. And then v'noches bar amiroi, and then a swimmer, a diver that would then go under the water. V'kotar atuni derkisna b'ksisa, and he would tie these flax ropes to the ksisa, to these corral that grows there, and so he would tie it onto the ksisa, and v'katalu b'svinte. And then he also tied the other end of the rope to the boat. And now, v'notli chala, slowly they would take out the sand of the boat, v'shadu levroi, they would throw it out, v'kamed the medalya, okra omasya. And as much as sand they took out, that's how the boat slowly was rising to the top. And then they would be able to, when the boat would rise to the top, so it would pull out this corral, and that's how we were able to get it from the seabed.
Growing under the boat?
It was growing on the bottom of the sea, and then that's it. So that's how they were able to pull it out. And the Gemara says how expensive this corral is. Umachlif al chatrein bekaspa. This could be exchanged for the weight of the silver. It could be exchanged twice the amount. It's worth twice the amount of what the silver is worth. Okay, so this shows you what this corral is. It's a very expensive wood that's brought from the bottom of the sea. Now the Gemara says, Tlas Parvasa Havian. There were 3 different ports. Tarti Bei Armoi. 2 of the ports were by the Armenians. V'chada the Bei Parsoi. And then there was another port by the Persians. The Bei Armoi, this port by the Armenians, Maskan Ksise. Over there, that's the place where they did this, where they would bring up this Ksise from the bottom of the seabed. The Bei Parsoi, by the Persians, Maski Marganisa. There, they would bring up the pearls from the bottom of the sea. Umekaria, and over there it got a nickname. It was called Parvasa de Mishamhig. Rashi says it means it was a royal port. Port of the king. Yeah. Okay. So this is the story about the Ksisa. Taisus over here, by the way, says the reason the Gemara is bringing all of these different names of the erez, the cedar, is the only thing it's negated to is mekechomemker. When you're making a sale and you make up with someone, I'm selling you this and this thing, so you have to know exactly what it is that you sold. So the Gemara is bringing this different meaning here. Rabbi Yechanan says, Kol shite v'shite shenotlu nachrim Yerushalayim. Every piece of wood, the shita wood, that the nachrim took from Yerushalayim, also, the Kadosh Baruch Hu la'achziran. The Eibishter in the future is going to return it. Shenemar etem b'midbar eres shita. The Eibishter says, I will give in the midbar the eres shita. And what is midbar here referred to? Ve'e midbar Yerushalayim. It refers to Yerushalayim. Shenemar tziyim midbar hisa. Tziyim became like a midbar. Rabbi Yechanan said, Kol alei mit Torah, a person that learns Torah. Ve'eina malamda, and he doesn't teach anything he learns to someone else. Daima lahadas b'midbar. He's like a hadas, he's like a myrtle, which is beautiful and it smells good, but it's in a midbar. No one has any benefit from it. Ikedamri, others said no, he said the opposite. Kol alei mit Torah o malamda. Person that learns Torah and teaches it, b'makim shein Talmud Chacham, in a place that there's no other Talmud Chacham there to teach Torah, daima lahadas b'midbar the chaviv. That's like a hadas that you find in the middle of the midbar that's very cherished. A person walks in a midbar, and mitamal he finds in a hadas. It's so geschmack in the middle of a midbar to find a hadas. It's the same with the Talmud Chacham that teaches Torah in a place that no one else could teach Torah. Rabbi Yechanan said, Oilem lo'oivdei kechavim she'elem takana. Woe to the Goyim that they have nothing. V'omer Rabbi Yechanan, Oy lehem lo'oivdei kechavim. Woe to them, to the Goyim, she'elem takana, that they do not have a takana, they can't correct what they did. Shenemar, the pasuk says, that the Eibishter says this is a nevuah going in Lasad Lavoi, the Beis HaMikdash, Tachas HaNachayshes, instead of the copper that there was, Avi Zahav. The Eibishter says, I will bring gold. Tachas HaBarzel, instead of the metal, Avi Kesef. I will bring better material, it will be silver. Tachas HaEitzim, instead of the wood, Nachayshes, it will be copper. The Tachas HaAvonim, Barzel, and instead of the stones, it will be metal. And Tachas Rabbi Akiva v'Chaveirov, my Mevin, instead of Rabbi Akiva v'Chaveirov, Rabbi Akiva was from the Asar Aruge Malchus, he was killed al Kiddush Hashem, and along with him all of his Chaveirim. The Asar Aruge Malchus, or others say, Chaveirov refers to all of the Yidden throughout the generations that were killed al Kiddush Hashem. So what are brought instead of them? So regarding them it says, V'nikesi damam lo nikesi. That the Eibishter says that the blood that the Goyim spilled could never be corrected. Of course, they're going to stand up for Tchiyas HaMesim, but you could never say that it wipes away this that they did, that the Goyim did, that they killed him al Kiddush Hashem, and therefore that's something that they have no takana for. It said in the Mishnah, Ome'ayin hoyim asiyin masuis chulo umibeis baltin, that they would show the torches of fire from one mountain to another, and the final mountain was Beis Baltin. My Beis Baltin, what is this place, Beis Baltin? Omar Rav, so Rav said, Zu Biram. This is Biram in Bavel. My goyla. Then it says afterwards in the Mishnah that they would see the entire goyla, the entire exile was all lit up like one big fire. Rav Yosef zu Pumbedisa. This is Pumbedisa, which was one of the largest cities in Bavel that had many Yidden living there, and also this was at the beginning of Bavel. My kimeduras ha'esh. What does it mean when it says that it became like one big bonfire? Tana we learned in the Braise, kol echad ve'echad noitla vuke biyadai. Every person took a torch in his hands, va'oila l'roish gagai, and went onto his rooftop. So therefore, it became like one big bonfire. Tanya, we learned in the Braise, Rab Shimon ben Elazar said, Af chorim v'kayer v'geder v'chavriseha. There was other mountains here that they would make this fire on them. Chorim, Kayer, and Geder, and the other mountains here. So what is this price adding? Ikeda Omri, some say, Beini Ubeini Avakaimi. These mountains mentioned in the Braise and are not mentioned in the Mishnah, they are mountains that are between those mountains mentioned in the Mishnah. Ikeda Omri, others say, Lahach Gised Eretz Yisrael Avakaimi. They were on another side. These are mountains heading towards Bavel, but from another angle of Eretz Yisrael. Mar Choshev the High Gisa. The Mishnah is counting mountains from one angle of Eretz Yisrael, or Mar Choshev the High Gisa. And the Tan and the Braise says from a different angle, and there are these mountains that he mentions. Rabbi Yochanan says, Ben Kol Achas Va'achas Shmoine Parsais. Between each one of the mountains mentioned in the Mishnah, there are 8 parsa. So Kama Havaluhu. So if Sot comes out, if we start in Eretz Yisrael by Hara Mishcha and we end by Beis Baltan in Bavel, and there are 5 mountains mentioned in the Mishnah, so how much is the distance? Tlassen v'tarten. It's 32 parsois. You start in Eretz Yisrael, and then you have another 4 mountains. Each in between each is 8 parsa, so 8 times 4 is 32. The question is, but v'haha idna tuvahavu. Now we see that the distance to travel from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael is much more than 32 parsa. Abaye, so Abaye said, Istatumi istatum luhu drachi. The roads, the ways to travel became closed up, and therefore you have to take detours and you can't travel on a straight path, so therefore it's much further than 32 parsais. The Pasuk says, L'chein hinni sachas darkech pasirim. The Eibusha says, I'll make the way from Eretz Yisrael, it'll be with thorns. Or another Pasuk the Gemara brings, Rav Nachman by Yitzchak Ama Mehacha, the Pasuk says, D'chsiv nesivoisai iva. My pathways became crooked. You can't go on a straight path. But if you go on a straight path, it's 32 parsais. Taisus actually asks a question that we see that even if you go on a straight path, we see that the distance from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel is much more than 32 parsais. So how can the Gemara say this? So Taisus says that it must be that there was a strip coming out from Eretz Yisrael that went closer to Bavel. That's what Taisus here says. The Taisus Harash says that if you travel from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, so there are many hills and mountains, so therefore you have to go up and down. Therefore it's a much further away, even if you would be traveling straight. But if you go in the ear straight without going up and down, when they picked up the masuais, the fires, from one mountain to another, the distance is 32 parsais. There was a large courtyard in Yerushalayim with Beis Yazik Kras, and it was called Beis Yazik. Ulasham, Kala Edom Miskansin, all the Edom gathered over there, or Bezdin Baitkin Oisam Sham, and the Bezdin would interrogate them there. Usudas Gedailis Oisam Lahem, they would prepare for them big meals there. Why? Bishvil Shiur Gilun Lavai, so they should be accustomed to coming again, they'll be treated very well there. Bari Shaina, in the beginning, they wouldn't move from there all the day. For those that went out of the Tchum, so once you go out of the Tchum, you're not allowed to go out of your 4 amas, so they had to remain right there in this courtyard. So it was very difficult for them. Hiskan Rabbi Gamliel Azakin instituted that they could move around 2,000 amas to any direction, like anybody that can go that direction, even though they went out of the Tchum, like someone that did not go out of the Tchum. This was said not only regarding these Eidim, the same is also with a nurse, with a midwife that comes to help a mother give birth, someone that comes to help save from a fire, someone that comes help to save from soldiers or bandits that are attacking, or from a river that's overflowing, from a wall that collapsed. So these people that came to save life have the halacha like the people of the city, and they can still go 2,000 amas every side, like a person that never left the Tchum Shabbos. The question was asked regarding what it said in the Mishnah that the name of this courtyard was Beis Yazik. Beis Yazik Tanan is the girs of the Mishnah Beis Yazik with an ayin in the word, or Beis Yazik Tanan, or the girs is Yazik without an ayin. Beis Yazik Tanan is the girs with an ayin Lishnim Al Yehu, and the word Yazik is actually showing us something positive about this place. The Chsiv, like a pasuk that it says Vayaskeyu Vayisakleyu, that he fenced it and he took out all the rocks. So it means that they fenced it off as a positive area. Or maybe the Mishnah should be read Beis Yazek without an ayin, which means Lishna Detzarehu. This shows that it's a place where there was a pain for the people to be there. You see the pasuk says, V'hu Oster ba'azikim, that this person is tied in chains. So this was sort of, they were there tied in chains, they couldn't move. So that's the question. Is this a name mitzvah the fact that they were stuck there? Or is it a name that shows on the fact that there was a very good environment there? Abaye says, Toshima, look what it says in the Mishnah. They served them big meals there. So they should want to come again. So we see that it was a place that they enjoyed themselves there. So we have to be guided Yazik. It's a positive thing. If the Gemara maybe they were both are true at the same time. On one hand, they made it to be a good environment with festive meals, but yet at the same time, there was some difficulty to this that they had to remain there and they were interrogated. So therefore, the Gemara does not resolve if the Girsa is Yazik with an ayin or Yazik without an ayin. How would they interrogate the Eidim? Zug Shabar Rishain, the first set of Eidim that came, Baitkin Isai Rishain, they would interrogate him first. Umachnisan es Agadol Shaban, they would bring in the greater, the older one of them, and Va'imrim Loin, they would say to him, Amar, tell us, Keitzad Reisa es Lavana. How did you see the Lavana? Lefnei Achama, the Lavana, when it was setting, did it set ahead of the sun, or La'achar Achama, or did it set behind the sun? Litzvaina, was the Levana to the north of the sun, or was it to the south of the sun? So as Rashi here explains, the Levana on the 30th day of the month could only be seen by the time of Shkiyas Achama. In the middle of the day when the sun is bright, so you can't see the Levana because it's so small and it's such brightness of the sun, it's impossible to see it. But when could they see it? When the sun is setting, so then the moon follows, it trails behind the sun, and then you could maybe see the sliver of the moon. So they would ask him the question, did you see the moon setting ahead of the sun, or did you see the moon behind the sun? Did you see it on the tzafin side or on the darim side? Kama haya gavaya, how high did the moon seem to you? La'ayin haya noita, to which direction was the moon facing? Right? You have the moon is like a shape of a crescent, and it's you have the tips of it. In which direction was it facing? You look in Rashi, you can see a picture of this. Kama haya rachav, how wide did it seem to you? Now, if he said that the moon was in front of the sun, what he said is meaningless. And then after they interrogated the Gadol, they brought in the second aid, and they would interrogate him as well. If they see that what they said corroborates one another, so then this is a good edus. So now that's it. They have their edus that they need for the Kiddush HaChaydish. V'shar kol hazugos, the rest of the peers of Eidim there, they would also ask them some basic questions about what they saw. Not that they need any other Eidim here, so that the other Eidim should not leave very disappointed, so they should be accustomed to coming again. If Bezin won't pay attention to them, they'll be disappointed that they came. Sagt the Gemara, or fragt the Gemara, Hainu lifnei achama, Hainu litzfainam. The question whether the moon was ahead of the sun, it's set ahead of the sun, and that the moon was on the north of the sun is the same thing. And if you say that the moon was setting, trailing behind the sun, and saying that it was to the darim side of the sun is also the same thing. So Rashi explains this, actually in the Mishnah before Rashi explains what this means. Why is ahead of the sun and tzafin side, or behind the sun and darim side the same thing? So Rashi says because the way the sun comes up on east and sets on west, it doesn't actually go in a straight line from Mizrach to Ma'ariv. It goes on an angle, on a curve. This is in Eretz Yisrael at least. I mean, I'm not sure if this is the way in the whole world, but in Eretz Yisrael, the sun comes up at the east southern corner, and then when it sets, after Chatzos, when it starts setting, it sets down to the northwestern side. So therefore, the only time you could see the Levana is when it's setting. So if the moon is setting ahead of the sun, so then it's south to the sun. If the moon is trailing behind the sun, so then it's going to be north to the sun. So therefore these two questions go together. Again, so let me just make sure I'm saying this right. The sun is always going to be setting, it's going from the south towards the Tzafin. Right? So you could only see the sun when it sets, when it goes down towards Tzafin. The question that the Bezdin asked the Eidim, whether the moon was ahead of the sun, it was setting ahead of the sun. And the question that they asked, was the moon on the north of the sun, is the same thing, as I'll explain in a moment, but it's basically the same question. And the question that they're asking, whether the moon was behind the sun, it was trailing behind the sun. It's the same question, whether the moon was on the south side of the sun, it's the same thing. Why is it the same thing? So as Rashi explains, because when the sun comes up on the Mizrach, on east, and then it sets on Ma'ariv, in Eretz Yisrael, it goes on an angle. It starts off on the east, closer to Dorim, and then when it sets, it goes from Mizrach, Dorim, but then it sets down on Ma'ariv, on the Tzafin side of Ma'ariv. Okay, so therefore, when the sun is setting on the Ma'ariv side, so if the sun is setting on Ma'ariv towards the Tzafin side, and the moon is ahead of the sun, so then where's the moon going to be? North to the sun. Ahead of the sun on the north, where the sun sets at the northern corner of the west. But if the moon is trailing behind the sun, so then the moon is going to be setting on the south side of the sun. So therefore the two questions of whether the moon was in front of the sun, setting ahead of the sun, or the moon was setting behind the sun, is the same as the question whether the moon was on the south side of the sun or the north side of the sun. So why does the Mishnah say both of these questions if it's the same thing? Amar Abaye, so Abaye answers, Pigimosa lifnei achama oila achar achama. The question regarding the sun being before the sun or after the sun is not regarding whether it's set ahead of the sun or behind the sun. Rather, the question was regarding the pigima of the moon. The moon is like the shape of a crescent. So there's that side of the moon where there's no light. It's like blemished, where you don't have the light. And the question is whether that side of the moon, was it facing the sun or facing away from the sun? Now, Imam Aleph Neachama, this is what the Mishnah says. If he says that side where there's no light to the moon is facing the sun, Layama Klum, he said nothing. Rabbi Yechanan said, "My dechsiv hamshel v'fachad imoy." There's dominion and dread with the Eibishter. Oisa shalom b'mreimah. The Eibishter makes peace with those great ones that are in front of him. Who are they? The sun and the moon. Which means, ma'olam le'roasa chama pigimasa shalavana. The sun never saw that side of the Levana which has no light. That side does not face the sun. And and similar also regarding the rainbow, that also is shaped like the moon. So that side that has no light in the rainbow is never facing the sun. Why does the side that does not have light of the moon face the sun? The chol shadaita, because this would make the moon feel bad. Before, in the beginning of creation, the moon had the same light as the sun. So now that it lost its light, so that place that it doesn't have the light should not face the sun. It shouldn't feel bad. Pigimasa shel keshes, the side of the keshes of the bow of the rainbow that does not have the light does not face the sun. The loyleimru oivdei achama. So those that are serving avodah zarah, they serve the sun. They should not say gira kamish daya. It looks like the sun is using this rainbow to throw arrows, like the nature of a person that holds a bow. So he holds that bow. The rounded side of the bow is faced away from him, and the other side faces the person. So if that side of the rainbow is facing the sun, the place where you don't have the light of the rainbow, it looks like the sun is holding this bow and throwing arrows. This is what the Avodah Zarah would say. So therefore the Eibusher made the rainbow the opposite direction. So the Avodah Zarah should not be able to say this.